The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Football fans, the time is now.
Give me a hell yeah!
For the football show you never knew you wanted. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Broken Helmet.
Coming to you live on tape on this Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. It is the best NFL show you have never heard of. It is the Broken Helmet. Rich Eggy here in the driver's sheet. And to get in touch in the driver's sheet, what is the driver's sheet? How about the driver's seat? Makes a whole lot more sense there. And to get in touch with the show, you can reach us at brokenhelmetshow@gmail.com or at brokenhelmetpod on X. So, everybody's talking about the trade deadline and the Jets' big deals for their first round draft picks, getting rid of Sauce. You don't want to hear me talk about that. I didn't want to talk about that. There's 8 million podcasts. You can go out there and listen to that. So, I actually picked up the horn, dialed it up, went back into the 790 series, and I was lucky enough to bring to the stage. Let me just get my sheet out here just to ring off all the accolades here, as it is the consensus All-American, Fiesta Bowl MVP, Paul Warfield recipient, NFL receptions leader in 98, Dolphins Hall of Famer, overall great dude, the one and only O.J. McDuffie. O.J., welcome to the program, sir.
What's up, Rick? What's up,
What's going
man?
on, dude? How you been?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Could be better, but I'm good, brother.
Yeah, well, for sure. So, I mean, dive right into it. What's good here? What's going on with the Dolphins in 2025?
Well, you know what?
Been better, right?
Yeah. Not a lot is good right now, man. You know, we expected a lot more from this team than what we've got so far. Started off with a really, really rough start, you know, in Indianapolis Colts, getting blown out by that team, and then having a couple opportunities to win some games, even had a chance to win a game in Buffalo, couldn't get that done. And then it's been all downhill ever since, man. You know, we stole a Monday night game, against the Jets.
Yes.
Thank goodness. That helped out
something.
a lot. Yeah. Then we lay an egg against the Browns, get beat up pretty bad after that, man. So, yeah, it's been a rough season considering, Rich, think about it, man. We drafted on defense, defensive linemen. We got some, I thought our front seven was going to be really, really solid. Kenneth Grant and all those guys that we got, along with,
we drafted Phillips. Going
Phillips,
back, you had brought in Chubb. This thing was built.
All these guys, we go back and we bring, Chubb's off the injury list and then Phillips off the injury list and, guys like that. We got Chop Robinson last year. We got Judon
PSU, Nittany Lion.
Yeah, we always got to make sure we put at least a Nittany Lion on every squad in the NFL. I thought the defense would be better, and they haven't been better, and that's been a big problem for us. I really thought the offense would be a lot better considering same coach, same offense, same quarterback, same wide receivers, same running backs, upgraded offensive line, and they have been terrible. And that's been the biggest problem for this football team. They have not lived up to many expectations.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, the team was built kind of to be like, if you want to think back historically, I always envisioned this rendition of the Dolphins to be kind of like the original Al Raiders 70s.
Right.
The 70s Al Raiders Davids. Al Davis Raiders.
Right.
Jesus, Rich. All speed, right?
Right.
And, it was clicking for a little bit, at least early on.
Yeah.
And now things kind of unraveled a little bit. It feels like a window may have passed.
Well, Rich, I think the rest of the league is caught up. You know what I mean? Especially when you become somewhat of a one-trick pony. I think that's us. All we count on was speed. Our play calls relied on straight speed. Guys started playing different defense to counteract that speed, keep everything in front of them, go up there and make tackles, inability to run the ball between the tackles. All those things lead to a putrid offense that we've had.
I'm rubbing off on you here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a problem. On top of that, Tua hasn't been very sharp this year. He's had a couple good games, a couple solid games, but some of them have been god awful. 3 interception games and a couple of them back to back. Another tough game just recently against the Baltimore Ravens. So, it's been a tough go, but I really feel like the offense has really put the defense in some tough positions, and we haven't been able to respond since.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking about the state of the Dolphins, where do you go from here? Do you stay pot committed? I was listening to a little bit of the fish tank, getting a feel for the vibe and trying to put my finger on the pulse here. I mean, Tua, do you stick with it? Do you see if you can fix it? Is it something that you move on at this point? Because, the Chris Greer, firing makes it feel as though that it's, beginning a new chapter. And how does that chapter start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, you obviously got a new GM coming in, and you hate for a new GM to have to come in and have to deal with the standing head coach and standing quarterback. Those are always going to be a problem for a lot of guys that come in and want to do their thing as a GM. And so, where we go from here is a great question. With 8 games left, it's going to be interesting how Mike McDaniel handles it. I know Mr. Ross has gave him not a vote of confidence, but told him that he's going to be here pretty much for the rest of the season. So we'll see how Mike handles, this football team and how this football team responds. One thing about this football team, though, Rich, is they haven't quit on him. They've gone out there and they played really, really hard. It's bad, despite the results, they've really played hard for Mike McDaniel. But, this is a results-oriented business, man. Strictly a results-oriented business. And if they don't go out there and figure out a way to change the narrative, it's going to be, it's going to be some more heads that'll roll other than Chris Greer. And, it starts at the top. So Chris Greer's the top. Next guy will be Mike. And then what do we do with Tua? Now, new head coach, new GM, possibly. What do you do with Tua? Well, hell, if we let him go now, we owe him $99 million. So we got to figure
It's a lot of coin.
That's a lot of coin right there. So we got to figure out a way to, for one, create some competition at that position. We got Quinn Ewers, of course, Zach Wilson, formerly of the Jets, in our locker room. But at the same time, though, I mean, we've got to go out there and get somebody that's out there in college right now that's, looking to build for the future. So tough situation for us, man. We put ourselves in that situation, paying guys, giving guys money before they prove themselves to be great or good enough to deserve a better contract. And that's where we're at right now, man. We're stuck financially, and we're stuck with some players that honestly aren't playing very well.
Yeah, well, you guys were talking about this on the fish tank, and I wanted to ask, you played, obviously, you've been around the game forever. Talking about quarterbacks specifically, right? I've always been of the opinion that quarterbacks aren't missed. I got a buddy of mine, his whole thing is like backup quarterbacks. He could name you the backup quarterbacks, the third string plus practice squad, where they went to college, exactly how they came along. And his argument is always, oh, it's opportunity. And we get into battles over a couple of beers because I'm like, what opportunities are really being missed, right? I mean, the NFL is built on success. Like, these teams want to win. Are there actually quarterbacks that get missed? There can't be, right?
Well, there's some guys that honestly, it's opportunity is one thing. I think system is another thing. I think system is more importantly than anything for quarterbacks, and also what you have around you. We had Ryan Tannehill down here in Miami, and he couldn't get anything done because we counted on him to do everything. He goes to Tennessee. They've got a run game. They've got a great defense, and he goes to the AFC Championship game. So I think that a lot of things must contribute for a quarterback to be great, and I think that happens for all of them. Hell, Dan Marino's offense was absolutely incredible when he was here.
Oh,
our
my
defense
God.
wasn't very good.
They mowed through everybody.
Yeah.
You got to experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved every bit of that, man. But defensively, we couldn't get a lot of things done, couldn't get stopped. So it's always about a situation where what's your quarterback going to be able to do for you in the fourth quarter? What's your quarterback going to be able to do for you in December? I mean, obviously, Rich, this quarterback position is the most important position in sports. And so if your guy's not getting it done in the fourth quarter or, late in the season and definitely in the playoffs, then what do you have? So more opportunities, one thing, I guess. But hell, you got to have some dogs in you, man. If you ain't got no dog at that position, the current dogs I see playing now, the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, even the Baker Mayfields, those are dogs, man. And that's what that position has to have.
Yeah, I'm a Giants fan, so
I love Jackson Dart.
He's great. I mean, you can't argue with the pick. Did we fall into it? I mean, who knows? Somebody along the lines liked it, right? If you watch the videos and those clips of basically, it's like Phil Shane. Oh my God, Phil Shane. There's one. Meant Joe Shane, but if Phil Shane, I'm going digging into the 790 vaults.
Right.
So, but Joe Shane's sitting there basically saying to Dable, well, you want to take him. We'll roll the dice and we'll see what it is. So somebody liked him and it felt like somebody didn't like him, and results come down the road. Right. So I'm not going to argue with Jackson Dart. It's been fantastic, but it could have been Daniel Jones. You referenced the Colts earlier. They beat the Dolphins. Watching Daniel Jones have success for me as a Giants fan has been painful.
Right.
Because the guy was so bad here.
Yeah.
He had flashes, but it's tough to find those QBs.
Yeah. And Rich, that's the point, though. You make my point there, When he was in New York, it was he and Saquon, and that was pretty much it. They count on them to be the ones that did everything to make that team work. He gets a chance to go to Indianapolis where he's got a great running game. He's got a great defense. He's got some solid receivers where, Daniel Jones is making plays, and he's up for quote unquote MVP of the league, but he's surrounded. His supporting cast is so good, and it's a perfect situation for him. And that happens to a lot of guys. When Geno made his move, Geno Smith, that's another guy that was cast off. Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was cast off, and he went to Minnesota last. Different guys. The right position, right situation, right supporting cast helps those guys out a lot. Whereas some of the other guys can do it by themselves, the Josh Allens, the Tom Bradys, and even Peyton Manning couldn't do it by himself. His supporting cast was better than any when you've got 3 or 4 Hall of Famers coming off of that team, including himself, and then he goes to Denver where that team was loaded as well. You need a lot of help in this league to be successful, and those guys have found it.
Yeah, true. And especially thinking back to Peyton in that last run with Denver.
Yeah.
It kind of really wasn't even him at that point.
Correct.
He had battled the neck issues, and at that point, he was just kind of a shell of himself. But it was big-time defense, and they gave him enough to win. And, you see the results. A lot of it's roster composition, right?
Yeah.
The way that teams are structured.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to put you in the crosshairs, but, it's funny to look across the league and look at the ownership, and you kind of can see, like, it's the same kind of group of teams who historically, like, year over year for the past 10 decades seem to struggle. And it's always the same process for all these teams. Rotate GMs, rotate head coaches, draft picks that don't hit. I think that the best teams have like a really strong organizational structure at the top.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And what do you do about that if you end up not being one of those teams? You kind of have to sit there and just ride it out,
Yeah, you're right, man. I was doing some things today because we got our live podcast tonight, and I was looking at our head coaches and GMs in the past, and like after Chris got fired, like I looked it up. I mean, we're on our 14th head coach for the Miami Dolphins. And you look at some teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've had like 3. You look at some organizations where there's very little turnover when it comes to that position, and that's key, man. The whole thing usually, man, boils down to quarterback and coach that are together forever. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, for example, guys like that. And you look at Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid right now.
Yep.
I mean, that combination is just it works when you have that, but when you keep starting over, and I'm going to talk about that later on tonight. When you keep starting over, you're just going to keep starting over. That's what you're going to do, But how much time do you give these guys? How much time do you give a GM? Chris Greer was our GM for 10 years. Mike McDaniel's in his 4th year. How long do you go? I get it in college where you give guys 4 years because you got freshmen, you give them 4 years, get through, blah, blah, blah. NFL, there's not that type of patience in the NFL, and I'm probably even less than that coming in college these days too. But I mean, hell, you got to get to a point where you've got the right coach and the right quarterback, and then start building, man. And that's always key.
Well, remember that text message? I don't know if you remember it, but we had a text message thread, and you just said it was 10 years ago, and I can't even believe that because it was right when who was before Greer? It was Tannenbaum, was it not?
Correct. That whole crew.
And it was like Tannenbaum was out, and I remember texting, and we were talking about it, and you were all excited to see a new regime and see Chris get in there. And that was 10 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, a decade ago, man. And it's been that whole same kit and caboodle ever since, bro. And it's like it's been frustrating, man. I mean, you look at Chris Greer. He had Adam Gase, he had Brian Flores, he's got Mike McDaniel. He had all those guys, as the coaches, and they never got it done with him at the helm as the GM. So I don't know, man. I thought the whole thing that Stephen Ross, our owner, sold us was the synergy between Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, and how they were all in concert with everything, and and they were until they are not. Things are just not
Until it
working
all
out
just
very
comes
well.
crashing down.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Giants up here in the north. The Giants and the Dolphins have a very similar history over the past 10 years. If you think about it, because, well, maybe not so much, because at least you guys have had Greer there. We obviously went from Jerry Reese to Gettleman, from Gettleman to Shane. And in that process, we've rotated coaches every 3-4 years. So we've had a little bit more turnover, but it's been the same kind of process of trying to build from the top down and get the right coach and get the right roster and get the right approach. It's crazy to think that the NFL, after all these years, is still such an imperfect science. Now, granted, you need a quarterback, but you would think that there would be ways to put together something successful without the quarterback. And I'm kind of now of the opinion, no, without the quarterback, I don't know if you get it done.
Yeah, you got to hit on that, man.
Yeah.
You really have to hit on that. And then, once you hit on that, you hope you got the coach that's right. Look at San Diego. I call him San Diego State.
I do it all the time.
Look at the Chargers. Look at the Chargers, and Herbert wasn't very good for a little while. Now he gets Harbaugh. Now they've got a synergy, that works very well for them. He's helping to build that team. Physically, a lot of great talent on offense and things like that. So it's always, if you get the quarterback, you got to find a way to make that work. I don't know why you guys didn't. I like Daniel Jones in New York. I thought he was a one-man show, there. I thought he had zero help around him. Saquon was in and out of the lineup, even though he's a great talent. Thank God. I mean, good for him that he found his place in Philadelphia. But I thought Daniel Jones was pretty much by himself on that team at times, man. And that, and then you press. When you're by yourself out there, you press. You turn the ball over. You try to do too much because you think that you have to do everything. And I thought that was a problem. And now I think he's happy that he doesn't have to do everything. So I think it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. I can tell you right now, right here. This is why right here. If I can get to it. Let me see if I can. I got to flip over. That's the standings. I wanted to share this instead. See that? That's why. Can you see that right there?
Yeah,
as I'm doing this on the fly here, I thought I had you in here, but I don't. So this is not how you do podcasting. This is actually the anti-podcasting. But see that right there? Those Daniel Jones eyes?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's what Giants fans saw, and that's what we don't want to see anymore. Well, and that was when he threw.
Well, you don't have to anymore.
This past weekend, I know.
You don't have to anymore. He's doing his thing now. He's happy. You're happy. So it's a win-win situation, right?
Right. Which is sometimes what has to happen, and why when you think about the Dolphins and Tua, maybe it is a break. You don't want to because you've invested so much in the position. But maybe sometimes it's just a change of scenery. I mean, you named a whole bunch. Darnold for one. I wanted Darnold drafted by the Giants when they drafted Barkley, only because we didn't have a quarterback, or we had Eli, but it was the end of the era, right?
Right.
And and for the longest time, I didn't like Darnold because you looked at him and you're like, man, I was really wrong on that one. Now all of a sudden he has 1 year over in Minnesota. Now he's over in Seattle balling away.
Right.
And I couldn't have been more wrong, I guess. Or maybe I was right, and it was just the change of scenery.
You're right. There you go. That's the thing, man. Come on, man. These dudes have talent. They all have talent, man.
Even, if you get to the NFL, you got to.
Yeah. They all have talent, man. I mean, hell, even Tua, at Alabama, I know it's probably skewed a little bit because Alabama. He's got all his wide receivers are first-round picks. A couple running backs are one. I think it was a first-round pick. That was a second-round pick. Offensive lineman, every single one of them probably went in the first round. I get that he was surrounded by so much talent, but he still made plays. He made things happen. He threw the ball so accurately. He was, his timing was impeccable. Things like that. When you're the number 5 overall pick on the draft, you're going to a team that's probably not very good. And so in that situation, it's going to be tough. Same thing happened with, with Daniel Jones. What was he? I mean, he was a top 10 pick.
I think,
You know?
what did we pick him up? We picked him up somewhere 5 to 8. I
That's what I'm
should
thinking,
know,
yeah,
but,
top 10 pick. Yeah, exactly. Where that means you're going to a
top
team.
10 for sure.
Yeah, and then, of course, Saquon was the number 2 pick, I think, in the draft that year. And, whenever he came out. So it's all these guys that going to teams that are rough. My best friend, Kijana Carter, went to the Cincinnati Bengals, number 1 overall pick.
Brutal.
They because they were terrible, So, it takes time for those guys to get the other guys around them. You hope you draft well and free agency well and things like that. So it's always tough. But when you get a chance as a free agent quarterback to go wherever you want, pretty much pick wherever you want to go, and you find a team that suits your needs and a team that wants you, things have seemed to work out lately for these guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what everybody hopes for as a fan, right? And obviously, as an alumni, you want to see the success come along.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been a while. When was the last time you guys made the playoffs? I don't know offhand. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't.
We made a couple of years ago. We got beat by, remember the coldest game in Kansas City. We lost that game. Then the year before that, we went to Buffalo and got beat by them. We almost won with our backup quarterback and Skylar Thompson. That was tough.
Oh my God, Skylar Thompson! I forgot about that game.
Yeah. Last one we won though was 2001. I was still on the roster.
Whoa, was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? That was the last time. That brings me up to something that I wanted to do, and now would be a good time to do it. So let me just, instead of sharing this, let me unshare this. Give me a second here. And then let me share screen. I had picked out something to do here. And when I pulled it up, I always did radio, right? And so I always did audio. And so this year I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to end up trying to do video. Right. And it's been great because, it's just stuff that I haven't done before. But in the same breath, I haven't got all of the nuances of having to use the software and everything.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, oh, yeah. And so, it used to sound a lot better as an audio and as video. I'm sitting here doing things on the fly. But here we go. Here is how well does OJ know OJ?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Let me see if I can adjust your dimensions here as I. So I have picked out here 5 individuals that all in their as 26 years old in the league all put up similar stats. So I just did 5. They're different years, but they're close to you. Maybe a couple are a little younger. I didn't do anything that was older being like in the 2000s because the numbers got a little screwy, right? Because obviously passing ticked up. Right. So here we go. Does OJ know OJ? I will ask you, look over these 5 individuals and let me know if you can pick out which one was you. They're all 26 years old. So the seasons might change. It might be somebody's 3rd, 4th, but all 26. Does OJ know which one he is?
Which one is OJ at 26? I've got to be 26, 62 grabs for 819 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Wow. Does OJ know OJ? OJ knows OJ. Wow. Good for you. I tried to make this one hard. You knew that right away. What was it? Was it the 819?
Well, I think, what it was I'm trying to figure out because I knew I had like more receptions every year other than kind of at the end. I know I got more and more. I'm trying to think like 3 or 4 years in the league. I know I was getting up there in catches. So I was wondering about my catch total more than anything. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of, and a C, everybody gets a C. When you don't know, you guess C, Richie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. You got to pick one and then go all the way down. Yeah, but I mean, look at that company, right? We're talking, I tried to pull out some, that everybody would know. Art Monk, Tim Brown, Henry Ellard, Andre Reed, wow. All 26. And look at those numbers, right there in the thick of it,
Wow.
It was,
I like that. At 20, yes, I I'll take that all day, every day, bro.
All day. I'll tell you what, you can run my fantasy team anytime you want with, the bear trap memory like that, being able to pull that out.
Got lucky one. You gotta get lucky every once in a while, man. You know what I mean?
Well, you're ripping through with the podcast now. For those that have not listened, it's the Fish Tank Podcast. I had to look back because, again, we had that conversation about Chris Greer. You just said it was 10 years ago. I had to look back because I was like, man, how long has the Fish Tank been going on now? It's been going on 7 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, how'd that whole thing start?
Yeah, we got in it at the beginning, man. It's a crazy idea by my man Seth Levitt. He was part of our communications department for the Dolphins, PR department for the Dolphins, and he runs Jason Taylor's foundation right now. And we were sitting there probably at a charity event, and we all had all these guys, these former players, Rich, that were sitting there talking, telling these stories, and that's all guys do nowadays. All old dudes do is tell stories now. They get together and they chop it up and they tell stories about days past,
Yeah, of course.
And so we're like, you know what?
Back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. And the stories get better and better. You know what I mean? It's just like they inflate everything still to this day. And so we're like, man, that'd be a great idea to have some of these guys on as guests and start telling these stories, man. So it was really like, it's called the Fish Tank, Dolphins Tales from the Deep. And it's about guys coming on telling their stories about stuff that, we don't know. You could look up like that, 62 catches, 819 yards, and 60, and 8 touchdowns anywhere. But do we know what Rich Agee, did, growing up? What position did he play? If he played like, say, you're a wide receiver now, wow, he played safety in high school, but when he went to college, he moved to this. He played baseball also. He was a pitcher. Things like that people really don't know. You can
right. Well, because the media this medium didn't really exist back in the day,
exactly right? Exactly right. So you get more of a backstory with people, and then we always try to get into what they're doing now after their careers, which is always fun. We just did Jeff Kaczynski.
I watched it earlier before. Yeah.
Jeff Kaczynski. That's gonna kill me. Zeph Zanina.
That's great.
We just had Jeff on it, and what he's doing now is crazy. Raising bucking bulls for rodeos. Doing dog shows. Showing dogs at shows like that.
Is that what he's doing?
Oh my God. It's like amazing. I'm like, you got a big defensive tackle, played 17 years in the league, and then that's what he's doing. I can get the, raising the bucking bulls part,
right.
And he said it's all genetics, but the, showing dogs at Westminster competitions, that was funny to me.
Man, he's walking down. Are they small dogs too? With a big dude like that?
He has a bigger dog.
He's got a bigger dog. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a little dog. So yeah, but just stuff like that, it's always interesting to us, man.
Big dude with a little Shih Tzu just walking through.
Right. How about that? All busting out of his blazer, you know what I mean? Shit like that.
Has he done the Bedminster show?
Yeah,
he's done the big dog.
Yeah, he's been in it. He said he got shellacked his first time at it. Now he's on to breeding more dogs. He travels around the world to pick up dogs, and he breeds them, and he raises them, and then he shows them. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you just never used to hear about it. I mean, you kind of started getting into that. I think like early 2000s. So I got to meet OJ because I was fortunate enough to be, assigned to his show at the time, which was What's Poppin' with OJ McDuffie. And I became his producer, and that's how I got to know him. And around 2000s, that's when the internet had just kind of hit, but not really. But you had seen a huge investment from local radio stations in all kinds of sports shows. And it started popping up all over the place. And that's when you saw ESPN start going big with ESPN used to be all highlights and nothing else. And then they're like, oh, we're going to do long form programming. So it was like Kornheiser and what's his name that did PTI and Around the Horn and all the rest of it.
Wilbon, yeah.
Yeah, and so as you had all of that extra time that you needed to fill, that's when you started to get all these extra shows, and then you started needing guests all over the place, and that's kind of when you started dipping into a little bit of people's pasts,
right.
And and I think when we had guests on, we used to do that quite well. Not me, but you used to do that quite a bit.
Well, Rick, you helped us out with all that research, man. You don't want to hook us up with all that, man.
Yeah, To an extent, but I mean, you guys were on the mic, but we had done that. Levitard was really good at doing that too. And nowadays, it just kind of seems like that is like what everybody wants to do. Like I don't care what you do now. Like let's get into your old stories.
Right.
And so, the internet is filled with them. So it's great for Dolphin fans to be able to have, this trough of, old stories coming to light with characters that you just never knew, their past before.
Yeah. And the fun part of the best part about it too, Rich, is that, a lot of those guys, a lot of people, they're like no names to most of these people. Some of them are no names to people. Like Jeff Scanina, they know him, but they don't really know him. They might have heard his name, but then you get to hear his story and the guys he played when he talks about Junior Seau, when he talks about Zach Thomas, when he talks about, Jason Taylor, when he talks about playing for Nick Saban and how Nick Saban, had a hard time dealing with 30-something-year-old rich millionaires. Those stories are
that much was apparent. I called that shit though. I called that.
Yeah.
And then, one of my claims to fame.
And then you get some ops guys, you get some equipment managers, you got a security guys, you got all these different people that bring such a different story to what goes on when it comes to football. We've even got a new series that we do called Sharks Amongst Dolphins, where we've had some guys on that played against the Dolphins. The Fred Taylor episode was phenomenal, talking about how he destroyed us, in the regular season and in the playoff game and things like that. Fantasy. So those are always fun things too. So yeah, it's just like those stories are epic, man. And I learned so much. My whole point is I learned so much doing it. And I get to know people that I thought some guys I even play with, I learned even more about by doing the podcast.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, because I mean, you just dip into stories that you might not have heard before.
Yeah.
Have you gotten into the story now? For those that don't know, OJ used to have these legendary pickup basketball games at his crib. Have you brought on anybody that used to be at the old school games?
Oh yeah. So anybody we bring on that play ball at the crib, we always make them in with their top 5 players that they play with at my house.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And yeah, so that's always been a lot of fun, man. And they, I run into people all the time now that all they talk about is the ball up. And we call it the ball up. Anybody I run into, like, how the ball up, who's the best player that played at your court? I said, well, the best player is probably Scottie Pippen, obviously.
Yeah, I remember his name used to come through.
Yeah, and then Mark Dixon. Who's that? An offensive lineman that used to come there who was just incredible on the basketball court. Big guy, had, quicks. He had a 3-point shot, drop step, dunk, run the court all day. He was there. He's a guy that everybody wanted to play on the same team with and not against. And then everybody in between, the Jason Taylors, the Terry Kirby's who played at Virginia.
Yep.
Chris Chambers who played at Wisconsin. Basketball. These guys played basketball at those places. So they can ball. So it was a lot of fun. We had the whole M1 team come over there at one point, and they worked out at my court, so it was always a fun thing.
Oh, that and one, I think they've got a documentary on the and one series that was on, and I think I watched it on Netflix. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They had the mixtapes and then all the characters that they produced out of that, huge marketing thing back in the day.
Sure.
It's funny that you brought up Chris Chambers. That was a name, I as a fantasy player, that's as close as I'm coming to the real gridiron. I had Chambers a bunch. And then it was like, as he faded out, like, again, he was another one of those, players that hit like the non-marketable era. So you kind of knew him as a name and nothing else. So it was a name I hadn't heard about. His name just popped up like 2 weeks ago, because if you watch the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game, it was, they just traded for Flacco, brought Flacco in, and he targeted Jamar Chase. I forget what it was. It was 20-something times.
Yeah,
right.
30. Yeah, right.
And that brought it up. But like, I think Chambers is still the most targeted player in a game at 20-something,
Wow.
And then you're like, wow, man, I never thought about this name. I never thought I'd think about.
Right. And you just pulled up my stats, when I was 26.
Yeah.
I had like 90 targets total for the season. You know what I mean? And these guys got 20-something in one game.
Dude, and it was funny because when I went, I was like, maybe I'll go a little bit older. And like I said, I left some of those, 2000s off, because when you started going into like 2000s, because I think your last season was
2001 officially.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so I started going in like the low 2000s, and it was like, forget it. Like the targets just went through the roof. It was nuts. And it was like, okay, different.
Imagine this. I led the league in receptions in 1998 with 90 grabs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That wouldn't even get you in the top 30 these days.
No,
You know what I mean?
changed so
So
much.
it's a different world, bro.
Yeah.
Different world.
It's so crazy. All right, so then give me your top. All right, everybody does Mount Rushmore, right? We usually do top 5, and for whatever reason that got thrown off and then became Rushmore, so it's just top 4. Give me the top 4 at OJ's crib playing ball. And I guess Pippen, you want to leave him off because
We'll
he
take
played in the
Pippen
league.
off. We'll leave Pippen
Yeah.
off. I've got to go with I've got to go with of course Mark Dixon. He's definitely at the top.
Okay.
Then I will go with Chris Chambers.
Okay, so that's 2.
His game was legendary on the court. Um, then I will go with Jason Taylor's game was inside, outside, smooth.
Oh, he was good on top of being big and
Everything,
okay.
man. Turn around, reverse dunk, all these different things, start off the glass. A good ball player that people don't talk. Aronde Gaston was way above the rim as a basketball